Welcome to the Village Talks podcast. This is a space where physiology meets lived experience, where we talk honestly about the body, the nervous system, relationships, and the real questions families are asking without fear-based narratives or one-size-fits-all answers. We're your hosts. I'm Dr. Jaimy.
And I'm Dr. Brittany. We're chiropractors, perinatal specialists, and humans who work closely with families through preconception, pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and early parenthood. Whether you're preparing for pregnancy, currently pregnant, newly postpartum, raising a little one, or supporting someone who is, you're in the right place.
Let's get into today's conversation.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Village Talks podcast. I'm really excited for today's conversation. Today, we are going to talk about tension patterns that we see in newborns, what they mean, what is it, why is tension important? How can a newborn get tension? All those types of things. It's something we see pretty commonly in our practice, and we love this conversation because it is so nuanced and there's a lot of information out there. So let's just dive right into it.
I think the first thing a lot of parents ask is, how do babies have tension?
Exactly.
Like they're so fresh and they're so new. And, for us, we recommend newborn assessments. It's just a check. It's a head to toe check. Let's see what's the baseline for this baby's body. Like, why would a baby need chiropractic care? Why would a baby need to be checked? Why would a baby have tension?
Their joints aren't fully formed yet. What?
Exactly. See, they're just kind of like a skin bag of cartilage. Yeah. But it's no matter how normal, how natural birth goes, it's a lot on an infant skull and spine.
It's still only 10 centimeters.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like it's a lot of pressure, repetitive pressure. I think, for what I see, really, there are different things that result in tension through birth. Yeah. When I originally went through the ICPA, CACCP training, which I started over 20 years ago, a lot of, we were coming out of the 90s where there was a fair amount of birth trauma. There were some practices and there were some things happening that did seem to result in things that created a lot more tension or trauma in babies' bodies. Yeah. I do think there's less of that happening now as a result, but it depends, but what I will say is what I was expecting was, dozens of babies rolling into my office with complex brachial plexus injuries and fractured clavicles, and not because the ICPA was saying that was happening, but, some of the more dramatic cases that were presented were very complicated, right? Just like clickbait nowadays, you see something really dramatic or you hear something really dramatic, that's what sticks with you. Yeah. And then I got into practice, and especially working at a birth center, I was like, most of these babies are not having really traumatic births,
or
right?
High intervention births.
Yes. Yeah. I'm seeing babies who had a home birth, who had a really calm water birth, and I'm still finding tension in their bodies, right? I'm not seeing complex brachial plexus injuries. I'm seeing babies who have a slight head preference and have developed a flat spot, or babies who are unable to completely latch because, their head position with how mom is holding them while feeding is not comfortable for them. So, pretty quickly realize there's a lot of subtlety and nuance to what is happening with these babies in birth. So really, really, really fast labors. It's like, great, it's over. Oh, it's a lot. It's a lot for mom. It's a lot for baby.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So it's a lot of pressure in a short amount of time. And then on the other end, when we have really, really long labors, which I think often part of that length is because baby's head position isn't probably ideal. Yeah. So yes, more tension into baby's body in these really, really long labors as well. Yeah. And so that's not to say that this is big and scary, but tension is not only really common, but I even think some amount of tension is really pretty normal. Yeah. Right. They come out, even no matter how this goes, they have been in a very tight, a very confined space. how much mobility and room they have is dependent on their own size, your body size, the size and location of placenta, how long is the cord, where is the cord, do you have fibroids, like what's the state of your uterus, have we had any surgery or trauma there, and then we've got everything outside of that in mom's body. So like it's never going to be fully tension free. Totally. We don't expect that, and we don't expect babies to come out and immediately just no, that's not, like they come out and they're like this, but they have their own unwinding process that happens in the days and weeks after birth. And we talk about fascial release work in terms of unwinding partially for that reason that like, yes, this is a natural process. And so, you know, adjusted my own kiddos within hours of birth, have adjusted lots of babies within hours and days of birth. And have seen things across the map. Some babies with like massive C1 misalignment, which is like, whoa, like that's not what you feel every day. And then I've had babies come in, you know, 6, 8, 10 weeks after an emergency T C-section, right? And I'm like, meh, I got nothing. This baby's great. So, you know, birth doesn't always equal no tension or more tension based on how birth goes.
And same for, I mean, in pregnancy too, I think some of these tension patterns do happen in utero, and then we see what happens in birth and that kind of stuff too. Like it's not just they're freshies out the womb and everything's perfect and well, and like, yes, your baby is perfect. And they have been around for the last 9 months. Going through things, learning their own motor skills that they need to when they're in the womb and all that kind of stuff. So there's lots of different things that are happening in utero and then also in the birth process too.
Absolutely. So I think the important thing for parents to understand is tension is really, really common, and it's not inherently bad in those first few days, but we should see some of those early patterns releasing or unwinding or dissipating within the first few weeks. If that's not happening, somebody needs to evaluate baby's tension. If we don't see anything, and then we do after a few weeks, somebody needs to evaluate. Or if we're not even aware of tension, which I think is most parents, but there are symptoms, right? There are signs that there's something happening underneath, then we need to have somebody check it. And so I think, you know, there's some stuff out there that would lead you to believe that tension is a good thing or is normal. So these are the, you know, 3-day-old babies who are like pushing up and looking around and people are like, look how strong my baby is. I'm like,
well, they got such great head control.
That's not strength. That's tension. There's so much tension on the backside of their body that the only way for them to find ease is to do this.
To arch into it.
It shouldn't look, it doesn't look easeful, right? There's a reason for that.
Well, and they are so stiff. They come up and they're here versus like I am strong and I have lots of control without being rigid. That's different when it comes to building strength and head control and all that kind of stuff.
So I think if you're seeing your baby do something that seems very advanced for their age, maybe be thinking about why that is. And then I think on the other side, you know, we do sometimes see babies with low tone where they do come out and immediately are just loose, floppy, open. That's also not normal. I mean, like if they're in a deep, deep, deep sleep and you see them there, or like after feeding or whatever. Like a baby should be able to get into a very relaxed state, right? If you don't have your baby swaddled, we should see hands open, right? When we have toes and fingers flexed, when we have wrists and ankles flexed, when we have knees and elbows flexed, those are signs of tension. Now, if they're crying and they're doing that, all right. But if they're sleeping without a swaddle and they're doing that, that's an indicator that there is some tension somewhere.
Definitely.
I think for not all tension is bad and not all tension needs to be treated. But I think more often than not, parents are under the impression from family providers or for whatever expectations that tension is normal and it's okay if they do all these things, and sometimes it's even good if they do these things because that looks like they're advanced. And that's kind of the opposite.
Well, and the common thing that we hear all the time is like, oh, they'll grow out of it. I'm like, okay,
Maybe.
Maybe it manifests as something different when they're older, especially when it comes to tension patterns. I mean, this is where we talk about torticollis-y kind of things, or maybe it's not to the extent of torticollis, but they do have a head preference, and maybe they don't have a flat spot yet, but they might get one. But at the same time, if we're kind of restricted in through here, then all of our movements are going to be related to what can we do with up here and where are our eyes going?
Yep.
Because they're the ones that are helping us track and follow and go towards those different movement patterns, like rolling and stuff like that too. So there's a lot to be said when it comes to the tension patterns we see, and they're not necessarily bad, but they're not great to have long term.
Yeah. All of that is setting the baseline for their body.
Yeah.
Right. So when we say, you go into a pattern, it's literally just that, that the opportunity for this to be neutral and normal can be lost over some period of time.
Yeah.
And especially the rate at which they grow, right?
Yeah.
You think about how quickly bones and muscles and soft and connective tissues lengthen. And so if we are spending months like this, then these tissues are not the same length as these tissues, right? Yeah. So the good news is change can happen really fast with babies when you get providers involved.
Yeah.
The downside is change can happen really fast when we're developing a non-functional pattern, right?
Yep.
I think too, like talking about head and neck position is probably the most common. I think is what most parents are aware of. And babies who are showing a head preference by 2 to 3 days of age, that now warrants intervention.
Exactly.
2 to 3 days, right? We don't wait and see because what and I say we is like a community who treats infants, right? Infant body workers, chiropractors, PTs, OTs, DOs, myofunctional therapy, like all of these people, what we see is they don't grow out of it. They literally grow into it. Things get flat, things get short, things get weak. It's a whole lot easier to come in 2-3 days on and resolve the issue quickly than wait, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 months. Now we've got muscle memory and all of this growth to combat.
Exactly.
But the rest of the body too, right? It's not just the head. Like we see a lot of babies every time they're in the car seat.
C-curve.
They're a little C-curve. So I'm like, start flipping through those pictures. And in every single picture of your baby, one shoulder and one hip are closer together than the other one. That's a tension pattern.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. And it's not just how they're sitting in the car seat. Like we see it maybe most often in the car seat, but that's in their body pretty much all the time. And doesn't mean that they can't navigate other positions and other postures, but they might not be able to do it as effectively. That's why I see all the time, like, oh, well, I see that they have great range of motion. They look to the left, they look to the right. I'm like, awesome. I'm going to check and see. And then I look, great range of motion to the right. And then left is like, yeah, we can get to the left, but it's not as far as it is to the right. And it's the same in the pelvis too. Like, cool, we can bring one knee up into our chest, but they fight me when I try to bring the other one to their chest, right? That isn't babies like, ooh, like, don't do that to me, or they're fighting against you. There's something there tension-wise that is preventing that range of motion from happening.
Yeah. Or at least preventing it from being easy.
Yes.
And preventing it from being comfortable for them too.
Yep.
And I think that when we look at tension in a baby's body and we look at those positions, I think of it as like a position of rest, right? Where are they when they're asleep?
Yeah.
Right? Because if their position of rest is with tissues in shortened positions, there's probably tension in those tissues, right? When we see babies who sleep in significant extension, there's tension on their dura, right? On their nervous system.
On the backside of the body.
Yes. So it's when they appear to be at ease, sometimes parents will be like, well, I only see it like when they're really tired, right? Or when they're really sleepy or when they're asleep. And I'm like, so they are showing you what is the most comfortable position for them. And if sometimes parents, well, they sleep in all different kinds of positions. I'm like, fine,
great.
Like if they're a little pretzel, right? Is it the same every time?
Yeah.
It's not, do they sleep in different weird positions? Is it always the same position?
Yeah.
Is the head always to one side? Is one arm always up? Is one knee up or one leg straight? Like their position of rest, their position of ease should be where tissues are soft and their body looks open, whether they're on their back or their belly, right? Newborns, we tend to see if they go on their bellies, everything kind of comes up. They're probably there on their back too, right? But as that unwinding occurs, do we open up when we're at rest, or is the rest position where something is shorter? Because that's probably where the tension lies.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, one thing we always tell our parents for their babies, that babies want to be soft and squishy and open. They do not want to be tight and rigid. So there's a reason why it's happening. We just kind of have to navigate and figure out what's going on and how we can help them unwind it if they can't do it on their own. Yeah. And I think, because so much of what we do is often with newborns, and we are quite frequently the first person outside of the pediatrician in the hospital to put hands on them. It is like we expect them to be really soft and really flexible, and there should be so much ease and movement in their body. So it can be pretty obvious when there isn't ease there. But I've also seen where we do see them in that newborn phase and things are great. And then over time, we start to see patterns develop or emerge. Definitely. So, we talked a little bit about, their position in utero, their time in utero, how labor goes, those are an impact. But then they get out here and they're relying on us as imperfect humans to care for them. So how we pick them up, how we change their diapers, how we hold and carry them, we have our own patterns, we have our own habits. And so, if we do have a baby who really is pretty quickly awake and alert and is looking around, and we only ever hold them on one side, they are always going to turn out to watch, right? Or we always put them on the changing table in the same position, or, we've got them in a bedside bassinet with mom to the right. Guess which way they're going to face all night long because you smell and sound like self, right? So it's sometimes very unintentionally, we as the caregivers kind of bring our own patterns and habits into play. And that also has the potential to introduce tension into a baby's body. And so we have to take that into consideration too. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's one thing I do try to educate a lot of our clients on is babies are our direct mirror because they're learning the world through you. Obviously, they're experiencing their own, but for the first 3 months of life, they don't know that they're separate from you. And so all the patterns that you have, not that I'm saying I want you to be totally like psychotic anal about all the things that you're doing in your life, but if you're noticing a tension pattern, do a mental audit for yourself, just like what you were saying. Like, am I holding them only on the left side because I need to get all my errands done on the right side? Or, it's easier for me to hold baby this way, and so they're going to feed more on the right breast than on the left breast. And like that has a really high impact. Or bottle feeding too, right? Like I bottle feed them in the same position every single time. Well, let's switch it up and make sure that we're doing everything symmetrically and bilaterally to make sure that we're giving them that well-rounded movement that they need to be able to either release their tension patterns on their own or to not create and build ones. And it's, as the caregiver, it's better for your body. Especially as you're healing, to do things symmetrically. Try to carry on both sides, try to feed on both sides evenly. We have our own dominance and we have our own patterns. And so we're never intentionally carrying that into baby. But I do think that in the parents who recognize it and become mindful about it early, they feel better physically through this phase. And then we see less of these repetitive tension patterns in their babies too. Definitely.
And so it's like every time you change their diaper, try to switch. If you forget, sometimes it's not a big deal, right? Like if you do something the wrong way one time, it's not a big deal. But when we look at a lot of these things, there's a lot of repetition. Like how much time do you spend feeding a baby? How much time do you spend holding a baby? How much time do they spend in that bassinet at night? We're talking oftentimes about hours a day. And because they are growing and changing so rapidly, something that might take 6 months to show up in our body from a repetitive habit could show up in their body in just a matter of weeks. And so just that mindfulness of, whoops, I've been doing it this way a long time. I'm going to do it. Oh, this is so weird and awkward. Like, I don't know if I could do that. Like, practice a little bit. And if it doesn't work, okay, then maybe we put them on our knees and we hold the bottle here, right? Like, mix it up, right? We want to be introducing different movements, different positions into their bodies as frequently as possible.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it's even just with the feeding stuff too. I see, going back to, restriction and head rotation and things like that, neck rotation. I see a lot of times is, well, they feed great in cross cradle on my right breast, and then they feed really great in football hold on my left breast. I'm like, awesome. I'm glad that we're getting that done. At the same time, there's a reason why, because it's the same position every single time for that baby. And so we're reinforcing that pattern. And so we actually really, yes, they might be struggling with it, but this is where we reach out to help babies work through that tension pattern so then they can do both sides really well.
Yeah. And so as an IBCLC, when you see tension patterns in babies, how does that translate into impacting feeding, right? Like, we don't love to focus on symptoms, but I think for parents, sometimes the way that it impacts a baby functionally is the easiest way for parents to recognize that there's an underlying tension pattern. What are parents going to see in terms of feeding if their baby does have some underlying tension?
Yeah. Often I see, kind of that like, oh, they feed in this position great, and then they feed in this position great, but they don't do it on either side. Another one is, oh, well, I just, I have one producer and one non-producer. I'm like, maybe, totally possible. But when you pump, do you get milk out of that side? And they're like, oh yeah, I do. But I'm just not sure if baby's getting it. I'm like, awesome. That's okay. We'll look at it and see what's going on. But I do kind of see that also when it comes to some of the signs and symptoms when it comes to dysfunction, but also gassiness, reflux, just overall upset and agitation in baby's body, either after a feed, like right after a feed, during a feed, they pop off a lot and they're trying to move. They can't get their arms out of the way. Like, those are all signs that we see in our practice. But what I see when it comes to like feeding specifically, latch gets really shallow. Oftentimes when there's a shallow latch, I'm actually looking into the pelvis, because like we hear in birth, don't clench your jaw because you're going to clench your pelvic floor. So if you can think about it, if your pelvis is so tucked and tight, guess what's going to happen? You're going to be here too. We're going to get into this flexed position. Now try to open your mouth and swallow something with it being in your mouth. Like, that's really difficult to do. As an adult, imagine when it's a baby trying to learn this skill, because they come out of the womb having the reflexes and understanding of what that is, but it's still a skill that has to be learned, whether you're breastfeeding or bottle feeding or doing a combo of both. And so that one specifically is one I see a lot of, is like, yeah, I just can't get their chin open. They have the double chin and everyone thinks it's really cute, but oftentimes it's because we're tucked back this way with that recessed jaw. And we're going to go a little skinful and a little flat, right? But if we can open up, then we'll get that like chunky chin. And then once we like are nice and well fed, then we'll start to see a little bit more of that skin fold and stuff like that. But oftentimes I do see when we have that contracted pattern, we get the skin fold here, which is our double chin. That's not necessarily our double chin. Actually, we're having a hard time opening our mouth wide. We get that lip flip. That is really hard to do with the top lip. Can't flange as well to create that seal that we need. Those are a lot of things that I see in our practice when it comes to tension patterns in babies. Yeah. Like with impacting feeding, because it's a cyclical thing, right? If we're not getting the feedback that we need to produce milk and create more milk, it's a very vicious cycle that we get into when it comes to feeding and milk production. And that's pumping and stuff like that too.
Yeah. And if baby isn't adequately emptying one breast, it produces less. Exactly. Right. So like you said, it's this feedback mechanism. Yeah. I think, coming off of feeding, we talk about that flex position is also going to impact digestion. Yeah. And that's another really common thing that we'll see with an underlying tension pattern is, maybe it's really difficult to burp. Yep. Maybe we are getting some consistent reflux or spit up. We're seeing a lot of gas. Yeah. And then we may be seeing constipation, infrequent bowel movements, difficulty with bowel movements. It kind of affects both ends.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, it goes into like what our pelvic floor is doing. That's really tight. Then all the tissues that are being supported by it too, they're also impacted because it can't relax enough to allow those sphincters to do what they need to do for bowel movements, for gas and all that kind of stuff, motility for digestion. That's all really impacted by it. And that's where we see a lot of that constipation or the really tight tummies. Yeah. That's not great. No. We don't love that for babies.
Shouldn't have 6 packs.
Yeah. It's not ideal. Not our favorite.
No.
Yeah.
And I think, sometimes with the feeding and digestion, it can be a little bit challenging because sometimes we do have additional factors, right? Mm-hmm. We can have food sensitivities. Yep. We can have, be trying to find the right formula that baby tolerates, right? There can be some other things in here that of course are going to impact all the things we just mentioned with feeding and digestion. But I think in terms of tension, it can be a contributing factor to all of those as well.
Yeah. I mean, I stand by it when it comes to looking at sacrum and pelvis for tension too, with any type of feeding stuff, because when I say shallow latch, it can be breastfeeding and it can be bottle feeding. Yeah. I mean, that it goes hand in hand.
Can't hold a pacifier in.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh, I just thought they didn't like it. No, they actually can't hold it in their mouth. And like the shape of the pacifier is also really important.
Yeah.
Those ones with the bulb at the end. Stuff like that.
If it doesn't look like a nipple, don't put it in your baby's mouth.
Well, and exactly right. We don't want to create nipple confusion. If we have a bottle and a pacifier, as best you can, you want those nipple shapes to be very similar because they're learning a skill set, and you don't want to, okay, with this thing, we're training and doing it this way. Okay. But then when we're here, now I have to learn all this. I don't know how that feels. Okay. But now I have to transition back into this thing. And their nervous system is going through so much already, and they're learning all these other skills too. We want to keep it as close to what it would be like to breastfeed as possible, because that's part of their neurology, it's part of their mechanics. And we want that to be very consistent, and we want to build that skill really well.
Yes. And reinforcing the same positive patterns.
Exactly. Yeah.
I do, parents will talk about nipple confusion. Like they'll be like, well, they're doing really well at the breast, but they're struggling at the bottle, or they're doing well with one. And I'm like, well, what do they look like? And sometimes I have to say to women, I'm like, is this what your breast looks like? Because nipples and breast can look different, right? And like, so if the goal here is that we are teaching baby to feed at the breast effectively, then spending a good portion of the day with something shaped very differently inside their mouth is not reinforcing the patterns that we want to reinforce for breastfeeding, right?
Yep.
I think another place where we'll see tension show up for babies from a functional component is sleep.
Yeah.
And parents need to understand what normal sleep patterns are. That newborns really it's not normal to sleep more than 2 to 3 hours at a time.
It's not healthy for them to sleep through the night.
No. Yeah. Because their stomachs are tiny. They need frequent feeds. Sleep is really, really important. There's a whole lot of neurological development happening, which is why they sleep most of the day. But they're not like adults. We don't sleep for 6, 8, 10 hours and then stay up all day, right? So I do think understanding what normal sleep looks like, but also understanding that we should expect them to be able to sleep for 2 to 3 hours without constantly waking, constantly needing to be comforted back to sleep. They shouldn't be making all kinds of squeaking and grunting sounds. We shouldn't see a lot of those tight flexed or extended extremes. Underlying tension can make it hard, not just for them to be physically comfortable in their bodies, but what has to happen for sleep is a deep rest of the nervous system. And when we have tension throughout the body, that tension carries into dysregulation of the nervous system, which doesn't allow for them to drop into that deeper sleep phase. So when we have babies who'll nap for 20 or 30 minutes, and then they're if there's a little bit of a wake and a settle, okay. But if we're waking ourselves up every 30 minutes, every 45 minutes, every hour through the night, their nervous system cannot even get to that deep rest and digest state. Oftentimes, it's because there is a tension present in the body that is impacting that function of the nervous system.
Definitely. Yeah. And I want to just to clarify, when we say they shouldn't be making a lot of noise. They shouldn't be making a lot of strained noise.
Yeah.
Babies are noisy.
Yes.
Newborns are noisy. That's one thing I hear very consistently for our parents of like, nobody prepared me for how noisy a baby can be. I'm like, yes, they're very noisy. But there's a difference between I'm straining, I'm in pain. There is something that's not right.
They're waking themselves up with the noise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. So
they might wake you up, but if they're deep asleep and then let them be.
Exactly.
But yeah.
But if they're like purple in the face, red, like if you can tell there is some kind of type of distress there, that's not what we're talking about. No. We're talking like, yes, they can be noisy and all that kind of stuff. But what we're talking about in terms of what to look out for with tension patterns is different.
Yeah. I think when we do have babies that have a lot of reflux and stuff like that, they do tend to be noisier, right? Gassy babies, reflux babies do tend to make more noise in their sleep. Yeah. Gruntier and things like that.
Yeah, definitely.
But there's the difference between sort of like, I'm moving around, I'm shifting positions a little bit, and maybe they are wiggling a gas bubble through, right? Yeah. But there, we have adults who are really light sleepers, and so then there's this where this baby makes noise all night, and I'm like, all right, well then maybe you and partner switch sides of the bed and you get some earplugs, and then if they're loud enough to wake this one up, then you can feed. But others are sleeping through. If you're a heavier sleeper, your baby may be making noise all night. But if they're not crying, it's not waking them up, then those are going to be pretty normal.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would say too, I mean, we've had a couple of our newborns have things like laryngomalacia, where the larynx is a little bit that little valve is more lax than we would like it to be. And that's a noise that we hear at night where it's more of like a wheeze, the kind of breathing that they have. Like that's also something we need to look into and kind of figure out what that is. It's not always that, but tension patterns are very different in those babies. Yeah, things like that.
Yeah, because they're working harder at some things than the average baby is, right?
Yeah, definitely. What are some other ones that we see?
I mean, as we get kind of past that newborn phase, and we get into like 3-4 months and we're starting to get mobile, right? So we'll ask them like, are they rolling? Yes. Great. So what that means, they're rolling from belly to back, both over right shoulder, left shoulder. They're rolling from back to belly over left shoulder, right shoulder, that they have full range of motion there, that eventually they are getting from a belly position to a seated position, or if you put them seated, they can get from there to their belly. Yeah.
Or even, I mean, before that, they learned how to glute bridge so they can push off, so they can roll. Like, are they doing that? Are they doing it well? They have that little where babies are like, oh, my baby's trying to do a crunch. And I'm like, this is actually reflex and it's really great. Yeah. But I'm so glad to hear that they're doing it. So there are things that we look out for when it comes to the development too, and like what a tension pattern would go into for them.
I think, through every stage is balance, right? I mean, somebody will bring a new walker in and they're like, they're hiking their hip, they're swinging their leg, and or we'll see a lot of like asymmetrical crawling like day one, and I'm like, give them a hot minute. This is a new skill, right? Like they may have a little bit of, it may not be restriction, they might just have a little more strength on one side. We do want to see that balance out, but I think with any of those, or even like those crunches, I'm like, if they're coming straight up, like, all right, I'm like, if they're always doing one of these,
different,
where we see a pretty pronounced difference from side to side. We see a lot of asymmetry, and it continues. Yeah. It's not something that emerges with this brand new skill. Yeah. If it's something that continues as they're perfecting the skill and they're perfecting it in an imbalanced way. Yeah. I would say going back to pelvis and sacrum, we have a lot of pelvis and sacrum tension. Those babies hate car seats.
Yeah, they hate it.
They scream in the car seats. Some of them really like motion. So like if they're fine when you're moving and then they're screaming when you're stopped, maybe that's not what it is. But if the second you put them in and they scream the whole time, one, that makes your life really, really hard. Yeah. So we've had more than a handful of those, of like babies who just cannot be in the car seat, and one adjustment and they're fine. Yeah. So it can just be really simple sometimes.
Same with like baby carriers. Like we have a couple that just hated being in the carrier because of the position that they have to be in for that. And then luckily we've been able to kind of like resolve that a little bit for our mom, so it can give them 2 hands.
Yes.
Yeah. It's so
and
nice.
Has their baby in a symmetrical position. Yeah. While you've got your 2 hands free.
Exactly. Yep.
Car seats are a big one. Tummy time. Babies who hate tummy time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we don't expect you to put a 8 to 10 week old on their belly and they're going to stay there all day long.
Yeah.
No, probably not. But for as many weeks old as they are, I think they should be willing to tolerate being on their belly.
Yeah.
Some parents are like, they love being on their belly. Like I put them just on a blanket on the floor and they nap really well on their belly. My second was trying to roll by 3.5, 4 months. And then once he figured it out, like he slept on his belly. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for some of them, they're going to love that position. But if you've got a baby who's 3, 4 months old and they are still screaming the second you get them in tummy time, there's a reason. It's not comfortable for them. We have to figure out why.
Exactly.
Because developmentally, they need to be spending time there.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's another one that we'll see.
Yeah. And I mean, when it comes to tummy time too, it's such another, I mean, these are all really big skills, but it's a big skill for them to learn. And what I love walking our parents through are the ways we gently introduce tummy time. I mean, I've said it before, but anything not on their back is tummy time in my book. But we can do where it's really just on your chest. Then we can go to maybe a little bit of support with like a boppy under them or something like that. And then I actually really love using yoga balls when it comes to that development, because as they get older and they have more strength and you can rock them into that position with that movement, you're actually impacting their proprioceptive input, knowing where their body is in space. And they're like, ooh, okay, I can be a little imbalanced. And then you go side to side and they're like, wow, this is a new plane of motion. I like this. And then you go into the circles. And then by the time you get them flat on their tummy, they love it. I'm like, this is awesome. Like, I feel safe to kind of like explore this way because I did it on the ball with a safe person. I was supported and all that kind of stuff. I love that way to introduce tummy time, because it goes into, again, helping them develop symmetrically and not creating those tension patterns for, preferring one side versus the other. Yeah.
Well, and if you think about most of the surfaces that babies are in, they're at least cushioned, right? So we do have a lot of parents who are like going straight to the floor for tummy time because it's firm. And so it should be easier for them to push off. I'm like, but they don't really spend a lot of time in other places that are super firm, right? Like we'll talk about, the mattress needs to be firm to be safe, but there's a difference between a firm mattress and a carpeted floor. Right. And so if we are starting here or we are on a boppy, it's a transition, right? They're learning these positions where it's still a little bit familiar and it is a little bit softer while still being supportive. But they're like, I don't know. Every time I put them on the floor, they scream. And I'm like, then let's do it somewhere else, right? Because you is the easiest place to do it for sure. And most people, they're like, oh, do you still have your birth ball? Bust that back out.
And if we see them throughout pregnancy, I'm like, don't get rid of it.
No.
First year postpartum, it's going to be your best friend. I promise you're going to love it. It's my favorite tool to use.
Yeah.
I would say another tension pattern that we see a lot is with C-section births, where we didn't get that compression that we need to kind of kickstart the SORM, or sacral occipital reciprocal motion. It's a mouthful, say that 10 times fast. But where the occiput and the sacrum pump that CSF up and down the spine, right? So in the brain where it's made, pumps out, does a little thing in the pelvis and then comes back up and it
bathes all the tissue in between.
All the things, right? But sometimes when I see babies post cesarean birth, they're here all the time and they're just trying to open up their cranium, open up the facial structures and stuff. And you can see their hands all the time just in their face because they didn't get that compression. And so they're trying to start that motion. And it's not a bad thing that that's happening, but I do see that. So that's where I do a lot of cranial work with those babies to try to help open up sphenoid right in through here, what makes up the bottom of the orbit into the temporals, all that kind of stuff, open up cranium in terms of frontal and parietal bones and seeing what that looks like. I don't know if you've seen that.
For sure. I feel like sometimes their hands are on the sides of their head, right? So they're not really pulling on ears because they don't have the grasp early on. I feel like sometimes we'll see, for us, like we're always assessing symmetry of the facial features because of the clues it gives us in regards to the cranial bones. A lot of parents don't notice asymmetries. Like even when I assess, like we're looking at them upside down because when our brains are programmed to see a face, right? And to put these features together in a certain pattern, and our brain it almost creates symmetry when we're looking at someone's face. Whereas if you can look at it upside down, now it's no longer a face. You can separate out the different components, right? So sometimes I feel bad when we point out these asymmetries because I'm like, your baby is beautiful and they're perfect. But do you notice how this eye is a little bit smaller or this nostril is a little bit wider or this bone protrudes a little bit more.
Or their jaw goes off to the right or something.
So these are they subtle? Yes. But when we're trying to build new skills with the mechanics of feeding and with what needs to happen to the structures inside of the cranium, that's the piece that, you start talking about the brain and that feels really big and scary. And I'm like, look, we're not talking about your baby's brain being squished and compressed, and we don't need to do some type of cranial decompression surgery. But there is a very delicate, important structure within this flexible skull, and it's going to grow a whole lot over the next few years. And if there is torque, rotation, compression at these sutures, it's going to impact the development of the structure underneath. So beyond a purely aesthetic, it
all has function for us.
That's just it. I mean, yes, like we human beauty is based on symmetry. So like, yes, we would love your baby to have a 100% symmetrical head and face. But it goes so much deeper than that. So much deeper. I've had parents, I had a mom years ago and she was like, what can you do about this baby's head? Like, he has a giant egg head just like his dad. And I was like, well, I can make sure that it is a very symmetrically shaped egg head. But, the overall size and shape of the head is determined by genetics. But just because your husband has a dip in this suture doesn't mean that your baby has to.
Exactly.
But if everybody in the family has really like big heads and needs custom hats, like I can't. That's out of my hands. But there's. I would say those are some of the things with the cranium that they might see, but what it's impacting then is that CSF flow. And that CSF has to bathe all those nerves. And if they're not getting the nutrients they need through that, that nerve tissue is not as healthy, and we don't have that optimum expression through the rest of their body. So it is all tied together. It is all connected. Absolutely. And so, if your baby likes to hang out over here and there's a mild flat spot and you've been told, it's fine, once they start crawling, it'll go away. Like, hopefully it will, but also why are we going to wait and see and try to fix the problem later? Because visually it's just a minor flat spot and it doesn't mean your baby needs a helmet, but also why is it there? Right? What's happening to the cerebellum and the occipital bone? What's happening to the side of the spine and all the muscles and tissues over there? Like it has the potential to reverberate throughout the body. Absolutely. And we want to remove tension and restriction as early as possible so they can continue to grow and thrive to, their maximum capabilities.
Absolutely. And I mean, with that kind of stuff too, you have to look, okay, well, let's think, when do the fontanelles close? Because that's another factor. Like we can keep the soft tissue elastic and mobile and that kind of stuff, but what is happening with what's actually needing to ossify, right? Fusion is different than ossification. Ossification is where those cartilage pieces become bone versus two bones coming together and fusing. But that back one is one of the first ones to go. And so you want to make sure that we have lots of good symmetry throughout here. So as the brain grows, the cranium can expand with it.
Absolutely. And I think, I think head shape and head rotation is probably the one most parents are aware of, right? It's what they're looking for. When it comes to the work that we do, like obviously we're always focused on the bones and all of the soft and connective tissues that attach to those. And then of course the spine, the nervous system, all of it. But I think that there is still kind of there are some misconceptions out there about when babies need care, how long they need care, when it's appropriate to release them from care. And so, we have some babies come in and we see them 2 or 3 times and they're great, right? The issues either were minor or resolved quickly. And then we have other babies where, we'll see great progress and then a little bit of a stall. Or, we get to a certain point and we're like, okay, we've done everything we can do. They need some strength, right? So, as we do with everything else in the clinic, we do very much believe in collaborative care. But we also often have parents coming in who, just like in an adult body, have tried other things. And so I think, we're always happy to be the first person to check and assess, and we will be the first ones to tell you if this is not something we do, or this is out of our scope, or they need, to see a different specialist. But on the other hand, I've also seen kiddos who've been in care for 6 or 12 months and haven't gotten results. Like, this isn't a thing where you're like, okay, well, let's give it all this time and wait and see if it gets better. No, like, there's one thing where like, I'm just going to sit back and wait and see and do nothing. But if you're actively doing something and the reason you sought out care or were referred for care isn't resolving or has resolved, with babies, and unless they have an underlying congenital abnormality, it's highly unlikely that we wouldn't expect 100% complete resolution of any issue. Right? If you're coming in and saying that your baby can't turn to the right, okay, your baby should be able to turn all the way to the right as far as they can to the left. And this is our goal. And this is how long we think it takes to get there. You and I are impatient. And we know that these tissues are very pliable. They are very well hydrated. They are very healthy. They are capable of very quick change. So adaptive. And so we want to see something happen really quickly. And sometimes it's like, okay, everything that I found and I set out to do is great. And now we send you to somebody else, right? Like, we move on to the next thing. And sometimes it's like, wow, they've been under someone else's care for a year. Why do we still have a significant head tilt and a torticollis? And
so why are they still like super gassy and refluxy? And you can tell their nervous system just is not settled. And it breaks my heart when I hear parents say like, like they said, we've graduated, or, they've done all they can do for now. But they weren't given a referral to anybody else and they found us online or something like that, or a friend came to us or something. And I'm like, oh, it breaks my heart to hear that, because collaboratively, I think we could have made huge strides. Like, if we all work together in that way, but also like, if we're still seeing those signs, like you're saying, like, we are not done. We are not done. There's an underlying thing. Maybe it's that their nervous system can't settle. And so they can't graduate and they can't move on to these skills because they're still stuck in fight or flight, right? Things like that. And I think, as we talk about babies getting older, just like we see with adults, like if it doesn't always do a lot of good to strengthen or learn a repetitive movement in a pattern that isn't neutral, right? So it's why we look at tension first. Like, you have to release tension from tissues before you try to build strength in tissues. You have to ensure full range of motion in these tissues before you're going to try to learn a skill through that range of motion, right? And so I think that's kind of the piece where starting with the tension first and releasing tension from all the tissues, including the nervous system, is so important to then, move forward and graduate to these other things. And so, sometimes like we don't do a ton of rehab in our office. So oftentimes we are releasing tension from tissues and then sending on for more of like a rehab type therapy, or releasing tension from the tissues and then working with myofunctional therapy for strengthening, versus if we're strengthening first, or we're going into rehab without releasing tension and restoring neutrality to alignment and things like that, sometimes I think it's reinforcing something that isn't a beneficial or functional pattern. And then, as we've said before, like, babies grow into these patterns because our bodies are really smart and they want to try to complete the task by whatever means are available to us. We want the means that are available to be the ones that are easeful in the body, that are creating strength where we want and need strength for this functional pattern. Definitely. And I always tell parents, like, babies are super adaptable and they are very resilient, but we don't want to take advantage of their resiliency. We want to make sure that they can do this really well. And there's a reason for it, because it takes the ease off of their system. It takes the ease off of their nervous system and allows them to live in a way that they're not hyper reactive to something, or they feel agitated or just uncomfortable or something like that, because they do feel those things. Whether they're cognitively aware of it or not is a different conversation, but they still have that and they're still living this life in those types of patterns is what I always tell them.
Yeah. What are some ways what are some of your favorite things to teach parents or send parents home with to maybe not directly release tension, but definitely, some ways to just gently support babies having ease in their bodies?
Yeah. My favorite, it's not an exercise at all. I ask mom to get into the bath with baby. Take a bath with your baby, put baby on your chest, help them regulate, especially in the newborn stages and things like that, because if they're having a hard time regulating, all the work that we're putting into releasing this tension, it can help, but I don't see huge leaps and bounds of progress. So first we need to help calm everybody, including you. So it's also a prescription for mom as much as it is for baby. But like bath time together, just get in the bath together and help yourselves regulate. After that, then I do love, infant massage is really great too, especially for working with some oral motor stuff going on.
Digestive stuff.
Yep. I'm not actually the biggest fan of bicycles, because when I think about when I'm gassy or constipated, the last thing I want is for someone to push my knees into my chest because it's super uncomfortable. Yeah. So I have more of like where we hold them upright and we kind of do a butt scrunch and like wiggle side to side to still get that motility, but it's not putting too much pressure on them to force gas out or something like that. Yeah. And then I talked about it earlier, but the ball, the yoga ball is my favorite when it comes to helping babies find safety in their body with different ranges of motion and things like that. It's one of my favorite tools, and it's fun for everybody involved, and it's an active thing that you can do together. And it's one of those are my top three that I recommend. How about you? Or top four?
All of those. I think gentle massage and gentle compression too. Even just like little gentle squeezes, right? So you can kind of do massage and then gentle squeezes. I think compression can be really positive input for their nervous system.
Definitely.
I really like gentle flexion extension, right? Like babies don't often get into full flexion extension. So like we're fully supporting, we're never letting go, but we're just guiding them through this flexion extension range of motion.
Kind of like a little guppy.
Yep.
I do rib compression too sometimes. Gentle.
I also like, as they get a little bit older, some of like kind of like the starfish pose, where they're kind of there and there's so many like fun little songs that you can sing and like, head, shoulders, knees, and toes, like, bring their little arms across and they can, and kind of same things with their legs, bring hands to toes. And so we're getting some cross body, we're getting some length, like we're not stretching babies, but I mean, you've watched them measure them on the paper, like it's kind of the same thing, right? Like you can just gently bring an arm overhead. And so where you're kind of facilitating some of this movement because they don't have the movement and control on their own in those first few months. And that is a way to kind of create some length and some fluidity to these areas of the body.
Absolutely. Those are, and I would say those are like are not basic, but like are ones that we love in general. Obviously, when we're in practice working with specific cases, we give very specific things if they're needed. But those are some of our favorites that you can do just at home.
Yeah. They're simple. They're gentle.
Exactly.
You can't really do them wrong.
Too much pressure.
Gentle, be slow and controlled. I think, for the most part, most parents are using a lot less pressure. Like we tend to be super careful with babies, which yes, they're fragile, but also like you can move them around, right? You can do some range of motions and stretching, and that's okay. I think most parents err on the side of being too gentle than the other way. But, for the most part, all of those things are good to kind of introduce, and you don't have to do all of them every day. You can have one that you like and do that regularly.
Awesome. Yay.
That's
All
it.
right. I think that's great. Okay, everybody. As always, if you have any questions, any comments, leave them in our comments section, please. We do read them. We want to make sure that we are answering any questions that you guys have. If you're in Denver and this conversation strikes some things that you noticed in your newborn, come see us at Belly Bliss. And as always, have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much. If you found today's episode helpful, you can subscribe, share it with a friend, or leave a review. It helps this podcast reach the families who need it most. You can find us at Belly Bliss in Denver and online for resources, workshops, and support. Until next time, take care of your body and trust its wisdom.